aliens stole human technology, then regretted it. Chapter 1. The Silent Harvest. 400 light-years from Earth, in a region of space catalogued only as Sector Val-9, the scout ship Ithra drifted in the dark like a held breath. Its hull was smooth obsidian, veined with faint blue light that pulsed in rhythm with the ship's single occupant. Commander Thesic of the Corvadi Collective had been watching Earth for 11 cycles. Not invading. Not announcing. Just watching, the way a scientist watches an anthill before deciding whether the ants are worth studying. The Corvadi were an old species, older than most of the stars they now lived among. They had mastered gravity manipulation before Earth had mastered fire. Their ships folded space instead of crossing it. Their cities breathed. And yet, in 11 cycles of observation, Thesic had grown obsessed with something so small, so laughably primitive, that his superiors back on Corvus Prime would have mocked him for even mentioning it. He was obsessed with human messiness. Humans built things that broke. They wrote software full of errors and then patched the errors with more errors. They invented machines that caught fire, cars that crashed, phones that shattered when dropped, and instead of discarding these failures, they kept iterating, arguing, laughing at their own mistakes, and trying again. The Corvadi had not failed at anything in 9,000 years. They had also not laughed in 9,000 years. Thesic wasn't sure the two facts were unrelated. Authorization requested, said the ship's mind, a cool voice that lived in the walls. Subject: Retrieval Directive 7. Extraction of human technological samples for study. Thesic hesitated. Directive 7 was supposed to be simple. Dip down, take a few discarded devices, come home. Harmless. Historical curiosity, filed away in a museum vault next to fossils and pottery shards from 100 other primitive worlds. Authorized, Thesic said. He should have said no. Chapter 2. What they took. The Ithra did not abduct people. The Corvadi had strict protocols against contact with developing species. First, because it usually ended badly for the smaller species, and second, because paperwork. Instead, they took things. A dented smartphone left in a New York gutter. A rusted Volkswagen Beetle abandoned in a Texas junkyard. A jukebox from a shuttered diner in Ohio, its paint peeling, a coin still lodged in its slot. A half-built go-kart in a suburban garage in Manila, complete with a lawnmower engine bolted on by a 14-year-old named Ramon who had no idea his summer project was about to leave the solar system. They took a payphone. A cassette tape labeled Mix for Sarah, do not erase. A microwave with a broken turntable that someone had fixed by taping a spinning fan blade underneath it. A skateboard with one wheel replaced by a rollerblade wheel because the original had cracked. Thesic catalogued each item with clinical precision, filing them under primitive technological curiosities, Sector Val-9, class, amusing. He did not expect to feel anything about a jukebox. He was wrong. Chapter 3. The Trouble with Fixing Things. Back on Corvus Prime, the items were installed in the Hall of Lesser Innovations, a long, echoing chamber where visiting dignitaries occasionally strolled past exhibits of developing world curiosities, the way you might glance at finger paintings in a museum gift shop. But the Corvadi engineers assigned to study the objects ran into a problem. They couldn't figure out how any of it worked. Not because the technology was advanced, quite the opposite. The Corvadi built machines with self-repairing quantum lattices that never broke down, so they had never needed to learn how to fix something that did break down. Every human object in the hall was a monument to failure and correction. The jukebox had a wire soldered in wrong on purpose, because that was the only way to make it play a stuck record. The Volkswagen's engine had a coat hanger holding the muffler on. The go-kart steering column was duct-taped to prevent a wobble that, Ramon had discovered through trial and error, only got worse if you tightened the bolt instead of loosening it. This is not technology, said Chief Engineer Vosjan, staring at the coat hanger with visible disgust. This is a wound with a bandage on it. Yes, Thesic said slowly, and for the first time in 9,000 years of Corvadi civilization, someone in that room felt something close to wonder. That's exactly what it is. And the bandage is the interesting part. The cassette tape was the hardest to understand. It took the engineers 3 weeks to build a working player, and when they finally did, the recording turned out to be 40 minutes of a human girl singing badly along to songs about heartbreak, interrupted twice by her own laughter and once by a dog barking. There was no data in it. No message, no code, no purpose the Corvadi could identify. They played it 72 times before Thesic ordered it locked in his private quarters, and even he couldn't explain why. Chapter 4. The The cost of curiosity. The trouble started when the Corvadi Council learned what had actually been taken. "You extracted a broken microwave," said Councillor Praxa, her 4 eyes narrowing in the holographic projection. "You extracted a child's go-kart. Do you understand the resources spent transporting garbage across 400 light years?" "It isn't garbage," Thesic said. "It's evidence." "Evidence of what?" Thesic struggled to answer, because the truth sounded absurd even to him. Evidence that failure could be beautiful. Evidence that a species without perfect machines had built something the Corvadi had lost somewhere in 9,000 years of getting everything right the first time. The willingness to try, break, laugh, and try again. But it was too late for philosophy. Because while the council argued, something else was happening that no one at Corvus Prime had accounted for. The human objects were still connected. Chapter 5. The Signal. The smartphone, dead and dark in the Hall of Lesser Innovations, was still registered to a cellular network on Earth. Its last owner, a woman named Priya who had lost it during a hurricane evacuation 2 years prior, had never cancelled the plan. Grief, mostly, and a stubborn hope that someone would find it and mail it back. When Corvadi engineers powered the phone up out of curiosity, it did what phones do. It searched for a signal. It found none, because it was 400 light years from any tower, but its systems, dutiful and dumb and very human in their design, kept trying. Every 6 hours. Automatically. A tiny persistent ping, translated by the ship's systems into a burst of radio noise that bounced off the Ithris hull and out into open space. It was not a distress call. It was not a message. It was a phone doing exactly what phones are built to do, refusing to give up on finding a connection. And somewhere in Earth's orbit, an old, mostly forgotten satellite network, decommissioned but never fully powered down, because decommissioning costs money and nobody had gotten around to it, picked up a fragment of that signal, matched it against Priya's account, and did the one thing it was designed to do. It sent a notification to her new phone. "Your device has been located." Chapter 6. Regret. Priya didn't believe it at first. Neither did the engineer at the telecom company who flagged the anomaly, nor the astronomer friend she called out of desperation, nor the amateur radio enthusiast in Chile who happened to catch the same signal and post about it online under the header found a weird repeating ping. Anyone else seeing this? But signals, once noticed, are hard to UN notice. Within 3 months, 3 separate observatories had triangulated a source in Sector Val 9. Within 6, a modest but persistent research effort had begun. Not a fleet, not a war effort, just a stubborn, underfunded coalition of scientists who refused to let the anomaly go, because that is also a very human trait. On Corvus Prime, Thesic watched the growing chatter with something he did not have a word for in his own language. The closest human word, he later learned, was guilt. "We took a phone from a grieving woman," he told the council. "We took a boy's unfinished project. We took a mixtape someone was told never to erase. We treated their history like litter, and it turns out their litter doesn't know how to stay quiet." Councillor Praxa, to her credit, did not gloat. "What do you propose?" Thesic thought of the jukebox, the coat hanger, the badly sung heartbreak song played 72 times. He thought about a species that fixed broken things with whatever was on hand and never quite stopped trying. And he understood, finally, exactly what he wanted to say. "We give it back," he said. "All of it. And we tell them the truth." Chapter 7. Return. The Ithra returned to Earth's orbit on a grey October morning, in full view of every telescope trained on Sector Val 9. There was no invasion. No demand. Just a single ship and a single message broadcast in painstakingly translated English, apologizing, genuinely, awkwardly, the way you apologize when you finally understood you were wrong, for taking things that were never really garbage at all. The objects came down one by one in reinforced pods. The smartphone, gently restored, its screen no longer cracked. The Volkswagen, engine running better than it ever had, coat hanger still attached because Thesic had insisted it stay. A repair is part of the object story, he'd argued, and for once, no one on the council disagreed. The go-kart, landing gently in Ramon's backyard in Manila, now 17 and stunned speechless, its wobbly steering column mysteriously perfect. The cassette tape, delivered by hand, or by whatever the Corvadi equivalent of a hand was, directly to Priya, along with a note that simply read, "We listened. We are sorry we didn't ask first. Thank you for making something worth listening to." The jukebox went to the Ohio diner, which had long since closed, but which reopened 3 weeks later when the owner's granddaughter decided the universe had just handed her a sign. Chapter 8. What stayed? The Corvadi didn't stop watching Earth, but they stopped taking. Instead, Thesic requested something unprecedented in Corvadi history: permission to ask. To knock, however that concept translated across 400 light years and two utterly different forms of life, and to say, "We are curious about your mistakes, your repairs, your stubbornness. Will you teach us how you do it?" It would take years for Earth to answer. Governments argued. Scientists debated. Ordinary people mostly just found it funny that the aliens' big confession was, essentially, "Sorry we stole your stuff turned out to have feelings." But somewhere in Ohio, a jukebox played its stuck record again, the same broken note it had always played, and for the first time in 9,000 years, on a ship silently docked in the dark above the Pacific, Commander Thesic of the Corvadi Collective laughed. It didn't sound perfect. It didn't sound practiced. It sounded, he thought, exactly right. The end.